Good morning, students. Welcome to our lecture on the parts of speech, which we are continuing as a part of our agreement series on the SAT preparation. Today, we are going to talk about prepositions and prepositional phrases. So, the first thing we have already done that when we have done the parts of speech, the basic introduction to the parts of speech as to what exactly is the preposition. They are words used used before nouns and pronouns, sometimes other words as well, like adjectives, and they are used to show the relationship between various words. So the relationship in terms of direction, time, place, location, spatial relationships, right? Or to introduce an object. These are all called prepositions. Words like in, at, on, off, and to are most common prepositions. So these are some prepositions that I have enlisted. The parts of prepositions that follow the preposition are called the preposition complements. The preposition complements, as I've already mentioned, could be basically nouns or pronouns, depends on the sentence, right? So let's take some examples. They met at a party. They met at a party. Okay, the preposition plus noun phrase. A party. The film. During the film. She was taken ill during the film. Again, a noun phrase. Would you come with me? Pronoun. From there, it will take you half an hour to reach our house. So that's an adverb that follows the preposition. And until quite recently, right? So again, an adverb. So basically adverbs, pronouns, most common things that would follow a preposition. The part of the sentence that follows the preposition, this is important, a part of the sentence that follows the preposition is called the prepositional phrase. Like any other phrase, of course, like the noun phrase or the pronoun phrase is called the prepositional phrase. Now, the important part out here to remember for us is that whenever we have a phrase with the preposition, the subject is not a part of the prepositional phrase. So the subject is different from the prepositional phrase. So if we have two nouns, say noun number one and noun number two, and a prepositional phrase in between the two, noun number two ceases to be a part of the subject. The subject is only noun number one. These are some common prepositions. I'll take an example for this one. This is the most common concept which is tested on the SAT. So let me repeat it again. When you have got two nouns, suppose, and there is a prepositional phrase between the two nouns, the noun number two that follows the prepositional phrase ceases to be the subject of the sentence, and only noun number one remains the subject of the sentence. So let me just explain it by taking some examples. Obviously, these are some prepositions. You can pause the video and look through the prepositions. These are some common ones. These are some less common ones. It doesn't make a difference. Completely would depend on the kind of sentence that you write. So now let's write. Let's write the concept. Let's write the concept here. So whenever nouns or any other thing, of course, pronouns have a prepositional phrase, P-H-R-A-S-E, between them, the second noun or pronoun is not considered to be a subject. Okay, so this is the concept which is important. This is the concept which is important. Okay, so let's call it prepositional phrase concept number 1. Okay, PPC1. So let's take an example. So let's write down my dog as well as my cat dash on the mat. Now we want to fill it out with the verb either sleep or sleeps. You can pause the video and think over this, ponder over this, whether the correct verb should be sleep or sleeps. If you've got it correct, it's great. My dog as well as my cat. Now, as you can see that after the first subject, there is a prepositional phrase as well as. So this is the prepositional phrase. As you can see that as is a preposition. So my dog as well as my cat. Now, by this rule, PPC1, the cat ceases to be part of the subject, and hence the only subject remaining in this sentence is my dog, which is a singular subject, and hence the correct answer to this one has to be sleeps, not sleep. Right? So it's not a compound subject, it's not a plural. It is no longer a plural because it is demarcated by a prepositional phrase. But in place of this, if I write this sentence with a conjunction, my dog and my cat, then obviously the answer for this one has to be sleep, because it becomes plural. So I hope that you have got the demarcation on how SAT uses the prepositional phrases to trick you with compound subjects and singular subjects. These are some common mistakes that you could probably do. Obviously, this is a modifier placement mistakes, but then because it contains a preposition, I have kept it here. She pet her dog. She pet her dog in the kennel. Right? So now it is not very clear. The objective is that it is not clear what does this pet refer to. She pet her dog. Right? That was in the kennel. So the dog was in the kennel. So to provide sense to this sentence, I'm quite sure that we need to add something in this sentence. Obviously, there are thousands of ways of modifying this. So ambiguously placing your prepositional phrase. This we are going to take in details when we do our modifier placements during our course of studies on the SAT. Okay, now this could be this is probably the most important part of the SAT, as I have already mentioned. This is the same thing that I have mentioned in PPC1, that you treat the prepositional phrase as the subject of a verb. So it is not a subject, it is out of the subject, like this one. A bag of treats were given to the guests, right? Out here, treats become the subject. That is what it is treated as, because the verb used is were, but obviously a bag of treats. Now, as you can understand that this is the preposition out here, and hence this becomes the prepositional phrase, and treats ceases to be a part of the subject. The only subject remaining out here is a bag, and hence we cannot use a were. We have to was, rather, in this case, was given to the guests, right? A bag of treats was given. Treats is not a part of the subject anymore because the prepositional phrase of. And sometimes excessive use of prepositional phrases, I did this, under this, on that, things like that, right? So will add to a concept on the SAT, a problem on the SAT which is called wordiness. We will do this concept in due course of our time. It will add to wordiness, and hence lesser the prepositional phrase, better the sentence is. as it is in a sentence, you can actually omit the prepositional phrase, yet the sentence should stand alone on its own. So lesser the prepositions and the prepositional phrase in a sentence, SAT would treat it better. So in order to avoid wordiness, right, you have to use minimalistically prepositions. So let's take a SAT example. This is a very small topic, prepositions. Let's take a SAT example. The time and place for such a large event is subject to approving from the mayor's office. So obviously we can see that there is a compound subject out here, the time and the place for such a large event. Now for such a large event is the prepositional phrase, as you can see, right? And as I have told you that these are more often than not, right, non-restrictive phrases, or which if removed from the sentence would still make sense. So I could always read the sentence as the time and the place is subject to approving from the mayor's office. Still makes absolutely correct sense. I can as well remove this portion, which is the prepositional phrase for such a large event. That's still okay because it is there in the sentence. We are not harping on that right now. Let's go on to find out the options. So this is the first kind of SAT example that we are taking during the course of our events. So obviously A, which has got an is, cannot be correct because there are two entities, which is a compound subject, time and the place. So definitely we rule out A to start with. Then we can see that there are all R's out here, so we will have to find out which one is correct. So let's look at it. For such a large event, the time and the place are subject to the mayor's office approving them. It starts with a comma out here and then it continues. Let's see C. The time and the place for such a large event are subject to the approval of the mayor's office. Yeah, this one should be the correct answer. The time and the place for such a large event are subject to be approved by the office of the mayor. This is more wordy, so we can rule out D. There is the only difference between B and C that I can see is for such a large event. For such a large event, that it starts with that, so we don't need to do that actually. So B is incorrect. So the most logical answer that we are harping on is C, because the time and the place for such a large event are subject to the approval of mayor's office. This sounded very strange, for such a large event, comma, the time and place are subject to. So this is not the subject. I mean, you're starting with a prepositional phrase. So I would rather feel that this is not the way we would write this sentence. There could be more grammatical errors that we could delve into, but for the SAT, for the purpose of SAT, we are quite sure that we will not change the format, and C should be the most logical and correct answer. So there are some exceptions to this rule. In a very few exceptions, the subject of the preposition determines the verb that is placed. I mean, the number of the verb that is placed, or either basically the auxiliary verb that is placed, right? So, but then these examples are few and far between, and SAT really hasn't got such sentences. But then still, I'll leave you with this slide to stop your video, pause it for a moment and have a look. But then just to give you some examples, most of the street, right? Most of the street, the subject out here is the street is under repair, because this is a singular street we are talking about. But then let's look at the second example, most of the computers. Now this is a plural subject, are offline. So it depends on the kind of subject. So I'll leave you with the rest of it. I'm quite sure this is pretty much common sense, and SAT really doesn't test you for this kind of a concept. But then you can still pause the video and have a look. Stay tuned. The next section, 1.16, will be conjunctions and conjunctive adverbs. Nutshell in the prepositional phrases, the most important concept, as we have already jotted down, is PPC 1. That would be something like this: the cake, as well as the cherries, 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 on top, right? Are delicious or is delicious. I'm quite sure that because we now know that we are looking at a prepositional phrase as well as. So the cake as well as the cherries cease to be a part of the sentence, and hence this has got to be is delicious. But then if you remove this one and if I put a conjunction, the cherries and the cherries on the top are delicious, then this R makes sense. See you in the next section.